The Taurus Millennium G2, or the G2C that came after it, has been a very popular handgun platform, especially for carry concealed or just everyday carry. It's lightweight, has a 12+1 capacity, and it's priced right. And it also has all the features that we're used to in a larger, more premium handgun. But that price point is really what gets a lot of people into this gun. But as with any manufacturer, Taurus dropped the material quality a little bit to get it to that point. And one of the areas that they did that in with the G2 series was in the guide rod assembly. Now this is a plastic unit, plastic guide rod, and we've never had a failure. Most people never will, but it just doesn't instill a whole lot of confidence, especially when you can do a little bit better. Now the better comes from a company called Lakeline. Now they have many upgrade parts for the G2 series, and one of them is a new guide rod assembly. Now this is made of all stainless steel. I don't foresee this failing at all, but it's a really easy upgrade and very cost effective. Of course, replacing that is as simple as, if you've ever cleaned your gun, taken it apart, you should have done that and should know how to do that. You just swap the stock recoil assembly for the new one. Now, one of the other things that Lakeline makes, in addition to upgrade parts or modified parts, are some replacement parts. And for the G2 series, they do make striker spring replacements. The striker spring and the striker return spring. Now that takes a little bit of a deeper dive into the slide assembly to replace these. Again, you probably would never need to, but they can break, they can wear out over time if you shoot a lot. So having a set on hand, very inexpensive. I can't remember what the cost was, but it was under 10 bucks, I believe. Just makes sense. So we're going to show you how to replace these in your G2. The G2 firing pin assembly, the sleeve more specifically, is pushing up against the slide cover plate under spring tension. So in order to remove this, you're going to have to take a punch, something smooth, push down on the sleeve slot right there, while simultaneously working your fingernail in behind the plate and removing it. Now at this point, simply take your tool, put it in this slot, and slowly work it out of the channel, and that'll remove everything. So the next step is to remove the two spring retainer halves. Now to do that, you're going to have to compress the spring. Just push it all the way down as far as you can get it, and then push up on your firing pin lug, and the two halves will come out. And at that point, the assembly is just a matter of removing the spring, the sleeve, and the return spring. Now at this point, it's just a matter of swapping for the new one. The new spring assembly is just a reverse of what you just did. So start with putting the new return spring on, followed by the firing pin sleeve, and then the firing pin spring. Now the tricky part comes when you're trying to put those retainer halves back on. I like to use the back of the barrel, get the firing pin lug seated, and then just compress the spring. Now the secret to this is each of these springs, I don't know if you can see this here or not, but every spring end has a tag, or the end of it, and you want to make sure that your firing pin spring retainer, is 90 degrees to that. You don't want the seam of these two halves lining up with that spring tail. So make sure you got that alignment figured out whenever you start to install this. So again, I like to put the firing pin lug up against the barrel just to give it some upward support. Find your spring tail. Mine is over here, so I'm going to put that retainer in like so. And then for the next one, depress down. And this is where it kind of gets tricky. Turn it around so you can see here. Push down, Get your retainer lined up and just kind of work it into place. There we go. Alright, so that is set. That completes the reinstallation. Now all you got to do is put it back in. Give the sleeve a little light coat of oil before you do this. Go ahead and insert it into the channel, like so, and push it in. Now you're ready to put the cover plate back on. Now for that, go ahead and start it. Put it right up against the sleeve, and then get you a tool. Again, push down on the sleeve and the cover will go right on. Whenever you're doing this, make sure that you're using a tool that's not sharp. It's not going to gouge or damage that plastic sleeve. Don't want that to happen. And that's really all there is to changing out the firing pin springs. Real simple job. Anytime you work on a firearm, whether you are taking things apart to clean or you're doing a modification, before you get back out and shoot it, you need to do a function check. And that is simply to make sure that the gun is operating properly before you put live rounds in it. So to do that, we're going to first check our trigger safety. Make sure it's working, and it is. Next we'll pull back, we fire, simulate a actual firing condition. To test the reset, we'll go ahead and cock it, and then move the trigger forward, get reset, and it fired again. We're good. We'll check the manual safety, and we're ready to go to the range.